I bought a Buell XB12R, and let's talk about it. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time watching, welcome, and make sure you're subscribed. If you guys are viewers of the channel, you guys will be very familiar with the bike behind me, but I had never made its own collection video with the bike. And if you don't know what I mean by collection video, I have over 25, close to 30 motorcycles right now, and I'm slowly revealing them every single week with a new bike. The Buell was featured in the very first collection video I ever did with the other 3 bikes that I had shown at the time, but it's never been given its own video, and I think it deserves that. Let's talk about why we picked it up, when we picked it up, a little bit of the ownership, future plans, and kind of what this bike is about. Now, for those perhaps unfamiliar with Buell, Buell is kind of like almost a sub-brand of Harley. Harley Davidson in the late 90s, early 2000s, and continued on to about 2009, produced bikes together. Eric Buell worked with Harley, and then he decided to make his own racing program, and then they decided to make motorcycles together when they were successful with their race program. What you see behind me is the very last year of what a true Buell is. Buell makes motorcycles now, but the name has been sold from my understanding, and they're not associated with these bikes whatsoever. So that's something cool to just keep in mind. The motor is a Harley V-twin with 1280cc. It makes a little bit north of 100 horsepower. I think it makes about 115 horsepower, but it's more of a torque monster than anything. This is kind of a Sportster with a bunch of things that have been changed around it. This was the final year that Buell was being produced because they just couldn't sell them. They sold them at Harley dealerships, and then they ended up closing them out. Harley Davidson is made in Wisconsin. Buells are made in Wisconsin. I live in Wisconsin, so they had quite a few of these bikes at dealers, and they were just trying to get rid of them. This is the only new motorcycle that we have ever purchased. Brand new. This is a one owner, and we are the first owners. That's the only bike in the entire collection that's like that. My dad decided to buy it on the closeout because he thought it'd be something interesting to ride, something that would be cool for the future, because they stopped making them because no one really wanted them. But going into the future, things that people don't want at the moment but are semi-cool tend to do well going into the future. Now, these bikes did come down quite a bit in value since that even initial mark down on the sticker price, but this bike only has like 3,000 miles, give or take, on it. We've had quite a few issues throughout the years. The biggest reason why I think this bike had issues, and a lot of people in the comments of a previous video I made talking a little bit about the issues I've had, kind of just bring it up to the bike needs to be rode a little bit more. It has about 3,500 miles, and spark plugs like to fall out. We had fuel pump related issues, and all of that really has to do with the bike sitting more than it wants to be sitting. Newer bikes like to be rode, like to be driven, like to be ran through, and it's not like a classic. The classic bikes you can park for a few years and the front brakes might jam on you, but they'll most likely start, and if they don't start, they're probably just going to need their carburetors cleaned, and then they start. These bikes are not quite like that. They want to be rode, they want to be driven, they want to be opened up. And, well, I was doing that, I was riding it consistently, and I didn't have a problem until, well, the end of last year when I had a connector go bad. A connector basically fried itself. Now, it could have been because of the battery I was using, it could have been because it's just something that it ended up doing. It's not a big deal, haven't repaired it yet, but it's currently sitting inside the house because, well, I was hoping to get around to it. This bike is probably the most rode bike since I started riding a couple years back, and it's kind of been my go-to reliable bike that starts every single time pretty much, and it stopped doing that at the end of last year, so I was a little disappointed in it. We hope to get it fixed, and that's kind of been like the history with the bike. My dad rode it a little bit, parked it for a while because he got busy with work, and the bike started to have issues when it got parked, and then we solved all of those problems. And then this latest issue happened. I really like the bike. I like the way it sounds. I really like the way it looks. And I mean, I was 8 when my dad bought this bike. So, I mean, it's kind of something that's always been around. A couple interesting points about the bike is this isn't the fuel tank. The fuel tank actually sits underneath it. This is just an air breather. It does have a rear seat as well. This pops up, a seat slides out of this plastic cover and goes back on, and then the rear passenger foot pegs are all the way down here on that brace or bracket there. I was about to say, is it part of the swing arm, but it's not part of the swing arm. Overall, it's kind of something different. It's over a liter, but it's not quite like the peppy liter bikes that just rev like crazy and are super fast, but it's a bike that has a lot of power. It's a bike that definitely isn't beginner friendly. I've learned a lot riding on this bike. I've always taken it easy, but as I get more riding under my belt, the more I understand how actually tough this bike is to ride. It doesn't want to lean, it doesn't want to easily be manipulated down. You really got to know what you're doing in order to ride this bike from everything that I've experienced riding it these past few years. Future plans with this bike, I mean, I just want to get it fixed and I want to ride it a little bit more. My dad's tossed up the idea on multiple different occasions of selling the bike. But at the end of the day, I mean, we'll get a few $1,000s out of it, maybe close to 5,000 depending on the market. The bikes aren't really super hot right now, so when it comes down to it, it's not a good time to sell these bikes. And we've had it for so many years, I mean, there isn't really a point to sell it now. I think the most ideal thing to do with the bike is to get it roadworthy once again by fixing that connector, switching the battery just to make sure the battery didn't do it. We tried using a different type of battery, and I'm not sure whether or not the bike liked that. The bike always has a weird kind of stutter when they start, and that's not just this bike. I've noticed it with a bunch of different Buells, and I think just that little kind of like hesitation and resistance all got put on the connector that's behind me, and that's kind of ended up what doing it. So I don't know if it's a common problem or not. I've not looked it up, but I think it might be. I know the starter thing is kind of something I've seen universally, so I'm assuming that this has to be related. I just want to get it fixed and I want to ride it more. I mean, it's kind of simple as that. It's a really good bike. It's different. People who know what they are like to talk about them. They're like, oh, I haven't seen a Buell in so long. I haven't seen them since they were in the dealerships or whatever it is, because they're not very common because they didn't sell well. They did not sell well at all. And I think slowly people will start to kind of like them more and more. That's what tends to happen with motorcycles that don't initially sell well, but are semi-cool. Maybe it's not the fastest machine in the world, maybe it's not the best machine in the world, but once it starts to get a cult following, things tend to go up in value quite a bit. For me, it's not about value, but it's honestly something I just like riding. It's as simple as that. This is really the only super bike crotch rocket that we have in the collection, simply because my dad's mainly collected older bikes, and I have also mainly looked into getting older bikes. There are a few newer bikes and crotch rockets I would like to have. I'd like to have the S1000 Gen 1 BMW, the M1000. I would love to have a CBR Repsol 1000RR, but all those bikes are $7, $8, $9, $10, $15, $20, $40,000 in some cases. So this is a very affordable alternative to those bikes. And yes, those bikes are much faster than this bike is. Let me know if you guys have any questions about the Buell, any videos you guys want to see on it. Overall, I mean, I think it's just a fun, cool bike to have as part of the collection. Something that sits a little differently from everything else. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe down below. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one.